West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
My name's Kevin Jackson. I'm really glad to be here. I've been away for the last 4 weeks at our cottage and enjoying that, but it's nice to be back in town and back at West Hill. This is going to be the 7th of the 8-part series on wisdom, the summer series that we've been going through. So we've got one more week after this, and I'm excited about that. A warm welcome to everybody here in the hall, and if you people on Zoom can put your video on. You can have a nice wave, a nice West Hillian wave hello to everybody here in the hall, and the hall wave back. Hello. A true hybrid community. We feel like we're all together. I've taken advantage of the Zoom opportunity or option available sometimes when I can't make it, or if I just don't feel like coming into West Hill for the day or something. So it's a great thing to have that resource. Dan will be talking and exploring the essential link between truth and wisdom to define the key terms like misinformation and disinformation and illustrate their real-world impact. With examples, it will dive into tools for detecting falsehoods, logical fallacies, emotional manipulation, cognitive biases, and empower us with methods to fact-check and think critically. We begin today, as usual, by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and was previously occupied by the Huron, Wendat, and Seneca First Nations. This land is covered by the Treaty 20 and the Williams Treaties of 1923 and lies within the lands of the protected Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement of 1701, an Indigenous citizenship law made between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations in 1701 that extends from Montreal to Fort Erie. One of the core values and within the idea of the dish with one spoon is that those of us who use the land should not abuse the land, and individuals and groups should take only what they need from the land so that there will always be a healthy, long-term, sustainable environment, and that all participants in the agreement or the treaty has responsibility to ensure that the dish would never be empty by taking care of the land and all of the living beings on it. We invite you to visit First Nations, attend a powwow, and stay for the great feast wherein everyone is welcome and expected to partake of the food that is generously offered to visitors, all in good fellowship. Now we're going to get into the readings, and as you know, I will conclude them with the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey, and I invite you to respond with, may we walk in its light. First off, the reading from Robert A. Heinlein. You can sway 1,000 men by appealing to their prejudices quicker than you can convince one man by logic. And second one is by Marcus Aurelius, and I'm going to make it gender inclusive. I know quotes, you're not supposed to change them, but I'm going to do it anyway. To offer a strong person, to offend a strong person, tell them a lie. To offend a weak person, tell them the truth. That's Marcus Aurelius. The next quote is from Senator Mon Mothma in the Star Wars TV series Andor. The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil. When truth leaves us, when we let it slip away, when it is ripped from our hands, we become vulnerable to the appetite of whatever monster screams the loudest. Next one comes from Ephesians 4:2-5. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. And lastly, from the Qur'an 2.42, do not mix truth with falsehood or hide the truth knowingly. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
May we walk in
And
its
bye-bye.
hands.
Dan is a computer program and a former software entrepreneur who holds a BA in math and philosophy, concentrating on mathematical and philosophical aspects of logic and the foundations of mathematics. He also holds a Master of Science in Mathematics and Computer Science. It is wonderful to have Dan in the community and on the board as our finance chair, but it's a special treat when Dan comes to visit us at West Hill to take the mic to bring his perspective. And he is going to do that today, so it is my pleasure to welcome our very own Dan Cooperstock. Dan. You've got your fan club all set up. That's great.
I'm just going to shift it over a bit so I'm not blocking the screen. I'm not seeing the PowerPoint at the back yet. I do have my own. Lovely. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Okay. We're good. Oh, one more thing. I'm going to set a timer because I'm afraid this is long and I don't want to go too long. Okay. So that's just the title. So why is this topic part of our series on wisdom? So here's a definition of wisdom from online. The quality of or state of being wise, knowledge of what is true or right, coupled with just judgment as to action, sagacity, discernment, or insight. So without the ability to discern what is true, we cannot have wisdom, right? Oh, come on. Okay. So I'm no expert in this. This is just a strong area of interest for me. And also, this talk can only be, I'm just picking some topics in the area that I particularly liked. Whole books have been written on this, and they're very good reading. I also just want to apologize for all the colors that got used because PowerPoint kept recommending them, and I'm not good enough at PowerPoint to override it and say, no, I want all the pages to use the same set of colors. Okay, here's some definitions. So disinformation is false information that is deliberately created and shared to deceive or mislead. And we know we've got an awful lot of that in the world today. Misinformation. False or inaccurate information that is spread without the intent to deceive. The sharer believes it is true, or at least doesn't know it's false. And here's my thought, is that disinformation tends to turn into misinformation when it gets repeated by people who don't know it's false. So there's often very little difference. I think things can start as misinformation, but they probably usually, many of these things start as disinformation with an intent to deceive. And I'm just going to start by sharing something that happened to me 3 days ago, I think it was. Anybody that's on Facebook with me may know this. I reposted a thing about what it means to be liberal. It was like 12 points, and it's really nice, and it said it was written by Ron Howard, the actor and director. So I did have a bit of thought in the back of my mind, I should double check this, and I did not. Mr. Misinformation did not check. One of my friends fairly quickly said, you know, I think he didn't say that. And they're right. It was a woman whose name I should have written down and I didn't, who wrote it in a blog in 2018 or 2019, and then people started attributing it to different people. So great example right off the top of me getting caught with misinformation, which part of the point is that we can all get caught. Okay, next one. this is an example that my wife first saw on Facebook, and others may have seen part of it. It's an AI-generated deep fake video, which I think we know is a video that appears to be someone, but they weren't saying it. They just used AI to make it look like they were saying it. Mark Carney, seen during the election campaign, endorsing a get-rich-quick cryptocurrency scheme. I couldn't find the whole thing, but I found a bit of a news piece mentioning it with a very small clip. So they're going to play that from the back. Okay, the one that's going to follow this was also, I found on Facebook. This post may have been based on wishful thinking or a misunderstanding, I really don't know, or perhaps it was disinformation with the aim to discredit Donald Trump, which I think is well worth doing, but not with falsehoods. And I actually saw this posted by a number of people and corrected them several times. Come on. There we go. So this is what it was. Some of us may also have seen this. It's something about that Trump had shut down an LGBT plus suicide and mental health crisis line, and that Canada was opening ours up for people in the US as well. It sounds wonderful. No wonder people would want to repost it. But here's the problem. It's not true. Here's the answer from the Trans Lifeline, which is a Canadian organization. It's a national It's a peer support line run by and for trans people. It's Canadian and it's only Canadian. And in fact, lines in the States haven't been shut down. There was something that happened that was subtly related. The details don't matter, but it wasn't what the Facebook post said. Okay, so how do we find out the truth, right? There's a lot of sources. Okay, one of my all-time favorites, and I'm surprised that more people don't know about this, is Snopes.com. It's a general-purpose website that lists an incredible number of things that are going around that are wrong and explaining what's right and what's wrong in them, et cetera. It's great. And that's where I looked up the Ron Howard to find out who actually wrote that very good quote about liberalism. PolitiFact is another good one, particularly for US politics, because we all know there's a great deal of falsehood in US politics. And by the way, if anybody wants these slides which have links in them, I'm happy to share them later. Science-based medicine is a great one for falsehoods and conspiracy theories and this and that about medicine and other things in science. And then there's lots of others. You can ask ChatGPT, you can go to a Wikipedia site, and I also mentioned the Center for Inquiry Skeptics Toolbox. Okay. Oh, come on. Okay. The cranky uncle game. This is actually the thing that got me started on thinking I would do this particular perspective. I sort of been thinking about something like it, but when I read this article in Skeptical Inquirer magazine, it's like, this is right up my alley because, so this guy, John Cook, he's a research fellow in Melbourne, Australia. There's this article in Skeptical Inquirer, and basically, he's reporting research that if you want to counter falsehoods, you don't start with the falsehood and what's wrong with it. You start with this is what's true. Then you can mention the falsehood. Then you can mention here's the logical error or other argumentative error in it, and then go back to what's true. Because if you mention the false thing first, that's what sticks in people's brains. So what he's done is he gamified this process of learning about logical errors. And he's made this game. You can get it on Android, iPhone. You can go to the website, crankyuncle.com, and it's really fun. I'm going to show you a few slides from it. It's a great way to learn some of these things. So Cranky Uncle. I don't know why this doesn't always immediately work. Okay, so he lists a grouping of logical errors. And I can't explain all of them, but I'm going to at least list some of them for you to think about. Could be another perspective. So he used the acronym FLICK to remember the groupings, which are fake experts, logical fallacies, impossible expectations, cherry picking, and conspiracy theories. So fake experts, several types. Bulk fake experts, 500 scientists disagree with climate change, but the problem is they're not climate scientists. Magnified minority, fake debate. Logical fallacies, which is the biggest group. Ad hominem, ambiguity, slippery slope, appeal to nature, false cause, misrepresentation, oversimplification, red herring, false equivalence. There's a whole lot of them. Impossible expectations. Moving goalposts, lowered expectations. Cherry-picking types, anecdote, and a phrase I've always loved is anecdotes are not evidence. Quote mining, wishful thinking. Conspiracy theory types, contradictory things, overriding suspicion, nefarious intent, something must be wrong, persecuted victim, being immune to evidence, and reinterpreting randomness. So here's a slide from, from Cranky Uncle. So there's the uncle saying, what do you do when the world's experts disagree with you? Use fake experts. Come on. Fake experts seem highly qualified, but they don't have the relevant experience, like the climate scientists I just mentioned. We appreciate the importance of expertise in real life, and there's your example of that. Relax, I have a bachelor's in computer science as he's about to operate, right? So that wouldn't be acceptable, and it's no more acceptable in less obvious examples. Okay, here's one way that misinformation is often conveyed to make you believe it, is with an emotional appeal. It's often, it adds urgency, it appeals to maybe our health or our safety, encourages fear, anger, or outrage, as in that Trans Lifeline example. And seeing an emotion appeal should trigger your caution, saying, why are they saying this so strongly? They're trying to act on my emotions. Is this real? Is it true? And I just put up that example from the US vice presidential debate, which some of us probably remember, when Van said, they're eating the dogs in this town, right? He accused a certain ethnic group of eating the pets, which there was absolutely no truth to. Okay, so this is another huge area that could be another easily whole perspective, cognitive biases. Okay, we all have them. And they lead to believing or even creating misinformation, among many other problems. One of the biggest is confirmation bias, where we only pay attention to the stuff that confirms what we already believe or want to believe, and we pay no attention to counterexamples. And my example is a friend of mine from a motor scooter club who used to talk about a certain ethnic group being bad drivers. And I'm sure she just noticed a couple, and she ignored all the good drivers from that ethnic group, and she ignored all the bad drivers from any other ethnic group. And no, those people are bad drivers. Overconfidence in one's knowledge, which can particularly apply to experts. Placebo effect. Believing that something will affect you makes it so. Sunk costs fallacy. Oh, we put so much work or money or effort into this, we need to keep going even though it's not working or whatever. And there's tons of resources on the web for this, and I've got one particular link there. So, why is it doing this to me? Scientific method. So this is really important. This is how we establish certain parts of truth at least, not political truth perhaps, but a lot of areas of truth. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bad reporting on scientific research results in the reputable media. And it's due to partly a desire for headlines, clickbait, and also sometimes just lack of science literacy in the reporters. And so they just accept very simplified results, et cetera. And it's important to actually understand a bit about research methods for things like drugs and treatments to be able to think clearly about these things. So here's some aspects of that, of the scientific method. So some of you will know all this, and I apologize for going in detail, but the first thing is like super important. Double-blind randomized controlled trials. So this is, for instance, you're trying a new drug, you're trying a new treatment. So you have to have the new drug and at least one other group which is getting either a placebo or a fake treatment or whatever. A placebo is like a sugar pill, so it's a nothing. Double-blind means the people getting the drug or the treatment don't know which one they're getting, and the researchers don't know which one the patients are getting. And randomized means they're assigned them randomly to the groups, the people in those two groups. Could be more than two groups if they're testing it against an older treatment, perhaps, or something like that. So those are like absolute requirements for good scientific research. The number of participants in a trial is important. If you hear something about, there was this trial with 10 people in it, wait until they've done it with 1,000, Watch for oversimplification of the results, such as what happens often when it gets into the newspaper. And also, results need to be replicated, okay? This is a general thing in research and can be a real problem in social science research in particular, where there's been a problem replicating results. Meta-analysis is another really good thing where they look at a whole bunch of studies in the same area and say, what's the sort of consensus coming out of all those studies? So one real specific that I always love to emphasize is correlation does not imply causation, okay? So it's an example of the questionable cause logical fallacy, that just because two things seem to happen together, it doesn't mean one of them caused the other one. There could be a number of things. It could be a random effect. It could be both are based on some other underlying factor that's actually causing both of them, but not one is causing the other. And it's also similar to, here's our Latin again, for those of us that love Latin, post hoc ergo propter hoc, namely, after this, therefore because of this. Something happened after something else, like some kids were noticed to be autistic, and they'd had the MMR vaccine. Well, yeah, but it didn't cause it. And, there's a whole long story about that, which many of us, I'm sure, know. Okay, let's not lose my pages. So this is a great example. There's a website that shows a whole bunch of graphs of spurious correlations that they're clearly correlated according to the graph, but it doesn't make any sense. So this is comparing the number of bachelor's degrees awarded in social sciences over a range of years to the number of phlebotomists in Florida. A phlebotomist is someone who takes your blood. And you see they're almost perfectly correlated, but why? I don't know, it's probably completely random. And there's like a dozen more graphs like this on that website, maybe more, I forgot. But it's, I just find that so amusing. Okay, another problem. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Like medications or treatments that people are claiming treat a zillion different things. Or where there's no reasonable way that a medication or a treatment could actually treat anything, which applies to a lot of, the old snake oil business, right? So here's an example that I actually ran into. I just happened to find this TV show called Did I Mention Invention, where they're showing interesting inventions. They showed a device called Quell. It straps to your calf, and it supposedly sends electrical signals to your brain to help with any form of chronic pain. And I'm going, how can something strapped to your calf help with any form of chronic pain all over your body? It didn't make sense to me. So I looked it up. And the FTC sued the company making it in 2021. There was a financial penalty, and they were told to stop making such claims about broad pain relief. It's basically a TENS device, if people know what that is, which TENS does work for localized pain where you're applying it. Or I think it works. I'm not 100% sure. But so it turned out this TV show that I just watched a month or so ago was actually made in 2020 before they were sued. But what surprised me is that this show, oh, there's my 30 minutes. I'm almost done. This show, which is about invention, clearly didn't do their research, or they didn't have sufficient thought about, does this invention make sense as being something that could possibly do what they're claiming it does? Okay, now here's another huge topic. How do you address your friends' misinformation? What do you say if your friends or family are circulating misinformation? And this is a hard problem because sometimes it sort of comes down to truthfulness versus kindness. Do I say anything? Will it be seen to be unkind? Can I say it in a kind way? How will it be accepted? How much do I care about how it will be accepted? There's a whole lot of things to consider there. And of course, there could be a whole talk about this. We've had some talks that are relevant, talks about bridging differences. In the last year or so, we've definitely had some talks that are relevant. And so one thing I sometimes do on Facebook is say things like, I'm sorry, this is not true. Look it up on Snopes.com, and I'll give sort of a keywords to look it up under on Snopes.com. And I think at least most of us probably know, Facebook doesn't let you put links to news sites at the moment because they were upset about the law, which Mark Carney canceled. So you can't put the whole link to the actual page on Snopes. You have to tell them how to look it up. I don't think we have time for a group discussion period or anything, but here are some questions that you can think about. Talk amongst yourself over coffee, over the chats on the Zoom when we finish up, or when you go home with other people. So what are some examples of misinformation or disinformation that you've seen recently? How did you identify them? Did you react to them? How? And one final question is there a more detailed topic about some piece of this that you'd like? Let Joe know. And me, because I might be willing to do it. Okay, thank you all. Thank you all very much.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.